Okay, guys, so that was a really, really short one. The technician is here, and I hope we can fix what needs to be fixed. Now, back to this. We were talking in general about the syllabus, and I had mentioned to you what I expected with regard to the dissertation proposal. If, in summary, if we give you suggestions, please by all means comply with them. If our suggestions contradict, if you get one suggestion from Ken or one suggestion from me, then we can probably reconcile it. But the thing is, when it comes to suggestions, they need to be current. So, like when you're talking about when you're in my class, you're dealing with me, all right. Rather than going to Susan, rather than going to Ken, you deal with me, okay. And if somebody has said to you, for instance, well, this kind of dissertation research is perfectly okay, and I might say, yeah, it's okay, but it's not okay for the purposes of this class and for your committee that I will be on. All right, and any one of us on the committee, all right, can stop your research cold. We have to reach consensus. We can stop it cold. So I'm just telling you right now, you could have all A's, and if a member of your committee has serious problems and doesn't agree with the others, the committee stops, the work stops, you go back to the drawing board. So we try to reach consensus. It rarely happens that we would not establish that consensus because we get along extremely well, and we do want what's best for you. We're not simply grandstanding. But by the same token, this is not quite like turning in a paper in a course. Well, this is what I did, just grade it. Now, it doesn't work that way. It's an all or nothing deal. It either satisfies the whole committee or it does not. And get this. As you are doing your research, you'll have to deal with your major professor and ultimately with your committee again. And your major professor, whoever that is, it could be me, it could be Susan, it could be Suha, it could be Ken. Well, there are other committees. You need our signatures. No professor is forced to sign anything. That could be a potential problem right there. So you want to make certain that, I don't want to put it this way, you keep us all happy, but that you know what it is that we're looking for. And the thing is, whatever your research design is or topic that you may have picked, I think some of them are rather timid myself, that there are a lot more interesting things to talk about, but you want to have, there's some really, really good ones from my perspective, being subjective here, and then there are others that I think deal with one very, very small topic rather than dealing with something major. Like, for instance, if you look in the Booten book, Booten talks about, like, for instance, a research design that was done comparing the number of referrals that were written on African American boys compared to referrals written on other cohorts, other groups. That's actually kind of interesting. All right, then the federal government gets interested and does studies like that using social science research. They study the statistics, and some of you may be aware that the Federal Department of Education has come down on the schools for disproportionate suspensions of African American youth in the public schools, and that's a legitimate issue. It's a legitimate issue. And what are the policy implications? What do we need to do? All right, these are justice issues. That's an example of a really serious justice issue. Maybe your school has that problem. All right, maybe your school has other problems. Maybe your school, disproportionately disciplines another group. What would be the reasons for that? Are there reasons? It's easy to blame the kids and say that they're bad and they're lazy and everything like that. And sometimes they are. But in a dissertation, we don't use words like that. We talk about motivation. We talk about levels of social deprivation and poverty and socioeconomic status. We phrase it in such a way that we are attempting to solve the problem rather than accuse the person who is experiencing the problem, because this is not the criminal justice system. This is the public schools. We're trying to help people. So this is the way it works. So please keep that in mind as you do your qualitative or quantitative design. I believe Ken is probably your best bet when it comes to the quant design. I know good social science when I smell it. And I see it in some of your beautiful quantitative designs. I understand them completely, and I'm pretty certain that's the influence of Ken on you and Dr. Seaman. And those of us who are qualitative, I'm going to look at yours really, really carefully, because that's my domain, and I want to make certain that they are rigorous and that people don't just look at them as being fluff, because they're not. Qualitative design dissertations are often the most fun ones to read, because they deal with, I say fun, they're the most interesting, as they deal with real problems. And this is a doctoral program about real problems, all right, about serious issues in your school. Do not be timid. This is one of the reasons why I want you to, and it's not just what I want you to do, it's what the program wants you to do. Disaggregate in terms of race, gender, and social class, and do it. I don't have anybody dealing, for instance, in any of these programs, in any of the dissertations with the issues of gay youth. Is it just too hot to handle in your school? Yet it is a serious issue, and you have to deal with it. If you're going to be an administrator, you're going to have two parents walking in of the same gender at some point, and they're going to be wondering why your English department doesn't have literature that reflects their family life at home. How do you deal with that? All right, maybe you're starting to deal with it now. Boy, that would make great social science action research. I would like to know what's going on. Or about the Confederate flag thing that's going to be a huge controversy, if it isn't already, in a lot of your schools. We have several schools starting the school year right now that ban the Confederate flag on students' attire. People have opinions on that. Well, there's an opportunity to do the Lord's work when it comes to getting people to get together and dialogue across differences and understand one another's perspectives without necessarily changing their minds, but instead getting them to cooperate. You might be able to hear the workmen back there. I'm going to continue to talk good and loud, so let me raise the volume here. I think we're good, so just ignore the sound of the vacuum cleaner in the back there. He's using his shop vac. So again, to summarize, once again, I do want to get off the dissertation proposal. When we make a suggestion, follow it. Follow the suggestions of whoever your current professor is, and if there are real serious what you might consider to be contradictions, think of them as creative tensions, and you are in the middle. You're going to reconcile these and kind of keep everybody happy. All right? Because if you do what I ask you to do, and let me make that very clear, if you do what I ask you to do when it comes to APA-style triangulation, reducing researcher bias, all that mess, yeah, I am adding to your work, but you will have a research design that will survive the scrutiny of your committee. You will keep us all very happy, and we will send you on your way to do your research, and then we'll continue to make suggestions. And remember, it's not just a matter of submitting a paper and saying, well, this is what I want to do. A dissertation, suggestions are our polite way of telling you what needs to be done. All right? Not negotiated, done. All right? Read, mark, and inwardly learn. Positionality papers. You need to add positionality into your disprop, and you'll see where that's supposed to be in the thing that Susan has, the list of the things that have to be in the different chapters and at different levels. If you are in 726 and have not had 824, then you probably don't have much of a lit review, and you don't need much more than a skeletal one. However, I recommend that you have as good a lit review as possible. Some of you in 824 had lit reviews that were good starts, but not much more. You need a good 30 to 50 pages of primary and secondary sources, and absolutely nothing in there where you simply spend page upon page telling us what action research is and why a lit review is important. Don't do that. Tell me why your lit review is important. Okay? Why is you've chosen what you have chosen, and what will you continue to add? Because as we read through, go, maybe you need to read this, maybe you need to add that. Go get this. I think I made some of you are doing project method, and I suggested that you go back to the early 20th century and look at some old dissertations, some old research on the project method. There is a lot. It was part of the progressive movement, and they really liked it, and they studied it. So the fact that it's over 100 years old doesn't mean you shouldn't look at it. Right? Does not mean that you should not look at it at all. Some of you have quoted authorities as old as Comenius, which is good. I happen to like him an awful lot. However, he's not the only one. Some of you might be familiar with Quintilian the grammarian. So you have educational authorities going way back. Socrates had opinions, right? And Plato records them, right? He had opinions with regard to education, and he had his, you might say, his own kind of action research going on from back in the day, way back in the day. So, don't be afraid to use some really antique sources. And some of you are capable of reading them in the original, which is kind of neat. Your positionality, it says 1,500, 2,000 words. Make it 10 pages, double-spaced. Exclusive of references and exclusive of title page. 10 pages. And then you'll eventually take that and encapsulate it summarize down into one page, which you will write with as little use of the first person as possible. In fact, it might even be better for you to say, the researcher's position is as follows. Use the passive voice. Use third-person omniscient, by and large, through your paper. Avoid the personal pronoun I. I use it sparingly in my own 350-page dissertation, which was a qualitative study. You should use it sparingly as well, too. This is not a paper about you. Even if you are part of the of the design as I was. I used a hermeneutic circle as a metaphor for what I did when relating my own practice to what was going on in the districts and how the districts understood multiculturalism, because I was part of that. So I studied my own situation as well. But that's not the only thing by any stretch of the imagination. I had seven chapters, 2 of which were lit review, over about 115 pages, because there's an awful lot of philosophy in education that I had to research in order to understand the problem of multiculturalism in the schools, and then compare it with the rhetoric of the district and what we were actually be allowed to do in school in order actually to implement some of those ideas, and if we were actually implementing them with any degree of efficacy. And I even created a little scale. All right. So, but my results, I believe, are reproducible. You can take and do what I did in any school and probably get the same results. All right. And I was able to publish from it. I published an article and a book chapter, and 2 book chapters out of it. Positionality, we want to know, basically, now here we get to leadership. What is your leadership style? How do you feel your leadership philosophy impinges upon your study? How do you propose to be able to implement that philosophy in actual fact as you, deal with the consequences of your research and also in the process of implementing your research? All right, because you can't do it without some authority. All right, you got to have permission. You got to have authority. You have to have an idea as to how you're going to lead through this, because you are teacher leaders in some way. You're not just researching; you're also leading teachers in doing something. So your positionality should be 10 pages for me, and then summarized in 1 page in third person omniscient. Or third person singular, not third person omniscient, third person singular, where you just say the researcher's position is, and minimize the use of the first person as much as possible. This is not a dissertation about you, it's about what you're studying. Use the rubric to guide your writing. I think I have it attached here. If I don't, I will look for it and post it. Remember to send things to my mailbox, my USC mailbox. Don't send anything to my email accounts that I used until they got me a mailbox. Paper will be commented on for grammar, diction, style, and substance. Problems will be noted and read throughout your text as needed. Look at these corrections and comments carefully in order to avoid repeating the same kinds of errors in your dissertation proposals. Keep in mind that I take the reading and the thinking and the researching that goes with this kind of a course immensely seriously. I do not give A's simply for being nice, right, or for participating. If you want an A from me, you need to do all the reading. You need to post thoughtful posts and reactions to other people's posts. You need to watch all of my little videos. Okay? You need to comment in the various fora that are ungraded on various things. We are doctoral students. Not everything has extra credit. Not everything has points. But it's there. There are 350 points, and your final exam is a little less than a third. It's like about 28% of the grade, 100 out of 350 points, is your final exam. There'll be no extra credit on it. It is straight 100%, and find the best answer. And you will have a limited amount of time to do it, like 2 hours. And then the timer goes off, and that's it. Can't be any technological problems like the power going out or anything like that. You got to do it within a certain amount of time. All right, and you got to get it done within that time. So if you have SC and G in forest acres like I do when power goes out, and it's raining outside and you're taking the test, and all of a sudden the power goes out in the middle of your test, but you've still got another day because I gave you a 72-hour window, then what you can do is you can call me and say, this is actually what happened, because I can see it. I can go right on the outage chart. All right, but other little problems, there should not be. We are adults. I want you to make certain that within the 72-hour window, you are undisturbed and taking that test. Okay? The best way to do it, read, mark, and inwardly learn. It's going to be this book, primarily. And maybe a little bit from here from Booten. But primarily what's in here. As I said, some things you'll be able to figure out because they're identifiable. So, like when it comes to the G quotient, you know what chapter that came out of. But there are other things that are themes that various authors harp on. And if you've read the material, you should do okay. You should do just fine because it is open book. You are, in effect, preparing your notes for that test. And it actually kind of actually feels good when you take a good test like that, do well, and then you have good results from it, and you've done the reading, and it's kind of like a reward. I'm going to go to the next one.